Good morning and welcome to the Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce and today's webinar on increasing self-confidence and self-belief. I'm Narendra Multani, account manager here at the Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce. I work with businesses in the Thames Valley and I've worked closely with my member Louise Puddifoot with her membership. So thank you to all those who have just tuned in and are here to listen to today's webinar. Louise will be delivering today's webinar on the subject that I've just mentioned, increase your self-confidence and self-belief. So I'm going to pass you over to Louise, who will introduce herself and commence with today's webinar. I'd also quickly like to mention that this webinar is being recorded and then it will be available on our website via the YouTube link. So you can always just go back and listen to it or share it with your colleagues. So Louise.
Thank you, Narendra. Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Louise Puddifoot. I'm director at Willow and Puddifoot. We're an organisation that provides training and coaching focused on leadership and management development and mental health and well-being. And confidence is a topic we're often asked to cover. So we thought it'd be a really good idea to do a special webinar focused on building your self-confidence and your self-belief. Because we'd all like to be more confident at least some of the time, wouldn't we? Our self-confidence affects all aspects of our lives. It affects how successful we are, how happy we are. It can affect everything from the way you view your career, to the way you conduct your relationships, to the way you look after your own body. And low self-confidence can really hold us back. We've all had those moments, haven't we, when our confidence has stopped us doing something. At least I know I have. Maybe at work you haven't gone for a promotion or a new opportunity because you were worried people you would think you were above your station, or maybe you worried you weren't good enough. Maybe in your personal life you've never let on to that person that you've always fancied that you like them in case they reject you or because you think you're not good enough. Or maybe it's more like the day-to-day things, like not speaking up in a meeting because you're worried your voice won't be heard, or you think your opinion's not as valuable as other people. Maybe you struggle to ask for help when you need help. Maybe you've always wanted to put something on social media, but you don't because you're scared you won't measure up or you haven't got the right things to say. But the good news is that we can all be more confident. There are lots of proven techniques and tools that we can use to improve our confidence, but sadly we're often not taught them in school or at work, and I think that's a real shame. I personally think that these tips and techniques should be much more widely available, and I'm on a bit of a personal mission to share them more widely. So I'm really happy to be able to share some of them with you today, and if you can all take away just at least one thing that will help you improve your confidence and self-belief, then I'll be very happy about that. So we're going to cover what confidence is. We're going to talk a little bit about how your brain works, and we're going to share some techniques for how to be more confident. There is a chat pane available. You can chat or type questions at any time. Please feel free to comment or ask questions as you go, and Narendra and I will keep an eye on them and respond as we go.
Thank you.
So let's start by thinking, what are self-confidence and self-belief? If you can chat in the chat pane and let us know, what's your understanding or your opinion of self-confidence and self-belief?
So delegates listening in, please do post what Louise has just mentioned. So please go ahead and do that.
What do you see self-confidence and self-belief being? What do they mean to you? Feeling okay about things, yeah. What you can achieve for yourself, thinking anything is possible. Feeling like you can face challenges and fulfill expectations, being able to achieve things and having faith in yourself. Great.
Some really good ones coming in.
Yeah, it's kind of trusting yourself, isn't it? Having faith in yourself, knowing you've got what it takes, feeling like you're as good as other people. being confident in yourself, not being scared of what other people will think of you. Some great stuff there, thank you. And we use the terms self-confidence and self-belief pretty much interchangeably, don't we? Which is great. For me, I think of them as very slightly different. I feel like your self-belief is how much you like yourself, how much you're comfortable with yourself, you're proud of what you are, whatever you happen to be, you're proud of it, and all the things that you guys have mentioned in the chat pane. And then your self-confidence is similar, but sometimes can waver more day by day or task by task, depending what's happened that day, or what you're focused on, whether you're focused on something that you're experienced in or trying something new, that kind of thing. So there's 3 different factors that really affect our self-confidence and our self-belief. Firstly, our genetics, really, what we're born with, have a role to play. And then it's really how we're treated. So that could be how we're treated in childhood, how we're treated now in our personal lives, how we're treated in our work lives. And as adults, we typically have some ability to influence how we're treated. So that's something to bear in mind, that thinking about the people around you, making sure you're surrounding yourself with those people that have a can-do attitude for you, that are supportive of your ambitions and make you feel valued. And it can sound obvious, but we can be guilty of neglecting that time, or unaware of whether we are hanging about with the people that really help us build our confidence and our beliefs. So it can be worth reflecting on that for a moment and just thinking about who are those people in our lives who really give us that self-confidence that we need, and making sure that we're spending time with them.
A very useful point. Yeah, definitely believe in that.
Thank you. And then the final area, your thinking and your beliefs, is really what we're going to focus on today. So we're going to cover various tips and techniques to talk a bit more about how we can change our thinking and our beliefs. So firstly, let's think about someone you know who has high self-confidence and self-belief. What are they like? How do they behave? And you'll probably find, looking at this slide, that you'll see those behaviors on the left here commonly come up as the behaviors that people we think of that are self-confident or have high self-belief having. So think for a moment about yourself and how confident you are. Where would you put yourself looking at these statements? Do you find that you have more of the behaviors on the left, more on the right, somewhere in between? I'll just pause for a moment and give you a minute to read through those and have a think.
Listeners, please do also feel free to post any questions that you have, and Louise will answer them as we go along this webinar.
So as we start to build our self-confidence and belief, we'll be able to move more to the left of this slide, to have more of those confident behaviors. And that's really what we're aiming for, getting to a place where we feel more confident, where we have that belief, and that this is the way that we're behaving.
Louise, you touched on some really useful points here. I just want to ask, what is the most important way to get confident in the workplace for a new starter?
For a new starter, I think it's really knowing knowing why you're in the role, and understanding what your role is, and where the skills that you bring to the role fit in, and then being really aware of what you need to learn and what you already know, and putting plans into place to help fill those gaps in terms of the things that you need to learn. And then finding those people that you can build those relationships with to help you, and those people that are going to encourage and support you in the workplace.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions, delegates? Please do feel free to post, and as I mentioned, Louise will answer them. Okay, yep, Louise.
Thank you. So we're going to start by thinking about how our brain works, because it can be really useful to understand a bit about how our brain works to help us understand what's going on in our heads, and then that can help us build our confidence. And it used to be believed that other than in childhood, the brain was pretty much fixed, that you couldn't really change your brain over time. You may have heard sayings like the brain is hardwired, we only use 10% of our brains, is all downhill after 40 or after 50 or after 60, depending how old you are probably. But those things aren't true. They're actually myths, and they're not helpful because they lead us to believe that we can't change our brains or how we think. And in fact, improving technologies in neuroscience show that our brains are in fact really dynamic. The things that we do every day affect our brain's structure and chemistry, and we can make new connections in our brains at any age. So the way our brains work is that they're made up of cells called neurons, and these neurons communicate with each other via synapses, which are the connections between them. And we are creating and adjusting those synapses and those connections all the time. Every time we learn or experience something, the incidents and the choices we make shape what's happening in our brain and shape us. The ability of our brain to change like that is called neuroplasticity. You might have heard of that term, but basically, the more often you do something, the more often you think or behave in a certain way, the more it gets physically wired into your brain, and the easier it then becomes. So you can form new habits. Just as importantly, you can drop old habits. So as you make or break habits, it does involve changes in your brain, and as you change your behavior, you create that change in your brain. So you can also change your belief systems and effectively learn to become more confident. And as you change those kind of pathways through your brain, the way I like to think of it is building new pathways through grass, like similar to through grass. So the first time that you walk through long grass, it's really difficult to get through. You have to kind of make your own way through. It can be really hard going and uncomfortable. But then over time, as you do those same things over again and go that same route over again, the pathways become worn in and become established and things get easier. And that's effectively what's happening in your brain as you change your behaviors and change your way of thinking over time. So it can be helpful to change your brain over the long run. It's also really useful to understand more in the immediate moment how your brain works. So just want to highlight a couple of other areas of the brain. So firstly, this side on the left, the rational thinking side, this part of the brain works with facts, with truth, and with logic. And when you pick up something with your senses, so you touch something or you see something or you taste something, etc., your brain interprets that and puts it into context. It thinks rationally, it uses common sense, it refers back to past experience, and it can see other people's points of view. And that leads you to respond in a way that's appropriate for you. Make a rational response, probably a response that you think of as the real you. And then at the bottom there, we have the emotional thinking part of the brain. And this part of the brain is really interpreting things through impression, through feelings, through emotions, the so-called gut feeling. And it has direct links to an area called the amygdala, which is the emotional center of the brain. So this is where we have our threat system or our fight, flight, freeze system. Generally, as a species, we're programmed to monitor our safety all the time. And that threat system, that fight, flight, freeze system is there to keep us safe and help us react quickly to danger. So when it's triggered by something, our response is pretty instant and really based on instinct. So because of that, it's not completely under our control. It's kind of a survival response. So, you know, for example, if you're driving along the motorway and a car pulls out in front of you, you would probably slam on the brakes or swerve to avoid it pretty instinctively to keep yourself safe. And when you look back at that, you wouldn't feel like you thought about it at all. It just happened. Your reaction just happened. That's that instinctive piece kicking in and keeping you safe. The trouble is nowadays, our brain reacts in that way to lots of threats which aren't really a true threat to our lives or aren't really that dangerous. So, you know, something like going into an exam, or maybe giving a presentation, or maybe somebody saying something to you that you didn't like, can cause that same reaction. And then that can cause a really instinctive response without us thinking, which sometimes can be unhelpful and can also mean we lose our confidence in that moment. And you probably know when, sorry, Narinda, did you want to say something?
No. I was just going to mention something about, you know, public speaking. I think that's a really good point that you've touched on, because, yeah, if you think, you know, if somebody said something to you and you're just going to go into a talk or a presentation, you might not have, you know, your confidence level may have just dropped all of a sudden, and you might not be able to deliver what you were planning to deliver.
Exactly, yeah, it's the last thing you need, isn't it, in that moment when you're trying to pull all your confidence together and then something throws you off track. It's awful. Yeah. And we feel it in our bodies, don't we? So when that reaction takes place, we feel a physiological reaction. Our stress hormones are released, so we feel things like our muscles tighten, our heart beating faster, we might become really hot or flushed, our breathing might get quicker, and all of which is getting our body ready to fight, flee, or freeze. But in the example that you've just given, Narinda, you know, it's not helpful, because we don't want to be doing any of those things. We want to be standing on a stage confidently giving a presentation. So yeah, it can be really unhelpful when it causes us to respond in a way when the threat's really a perceived one, not really a life or death situation. And then that can really impact our personal presentation and our confidence in the moment.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, so I would just like to thank the listeners for listening in now, and also just welcome any delegates that have just joined us. And as I mentioned at the beginning, this webinar is being recorded, so if you did miss out at the beginning, you can just go back and listen to it via our website, and there's a YouTube link there which you can click on and listen to this webinar or any past webinars that we may have done that you may be interested in listening to. So yeah, thank you, Louise. Over, next slide. Yeah.
Thank you. So I thought I'd just give you a little example of when the fight, flight, freeze response got me. And I know there's a couple of people on the phone, at least, that know me. I thought you might appreciate the old photo. So this is going back many years to when I think I was about 21, and I decided to do a parachute jump. And I did one of those static line jumps. So when you jump out of the plane, your parachute's attached to a line and it automatically opens. You're not with anyone else, you're on your own. And you kind of go along and you do a day's worth of training, jumping off boxes and rolling around on the floor and that kind of thing. So you're all ready. You learn when you jump out the plane that you're going to look up and check your parachute, and that you've got a reserve to pull if it doesn't open, all that kind of thing. And then the next day comes and you're ready to go up. And in our case, it was really cloudy. So we didn't know if we'd be going up or not, and lots of people's fight, flight, freeze response was kicking in, and they were looking for reasons to go home and all of that stuff while we were waiting. And for me, I didn't really feel particularly nervous at that point, stupidly. So I went up into the plane. Eventually the clouds cleared and we went up, and felt really confident in the plane. And it was only when I actually jumped out of the plane that my fight, flight, freeze response really unhelpfully kicked in. And at that point, my response was to freeze. So I did none of the things at all that I was taught to do. So I didn't look up and check my parachute had opened. Thankfully it had, because there's no way that I would have pressed the reserve. And I didn't think to steer or anything like that, just came to the ground. However, luckily I did land in roughly the right area in the right field, but unfortunately I ended up landing on the runway rather than the grass, and falling on my face and getting dragged up the runway by my parachute, hence that lovely graze on my face. But back in those days I didn't have any understanding of my brain or what my likely reactions were likely to be, and I didn't know any of the techniques that you can use to help in those situations. So I'd like to think that if I was doing that again, I would have been able to cope with that situation and have techniques up my sleeves a lot more. So we're going to talk a bit about those kind of techniques that can help you with those things as we go on today. So the first technique we want to talk about is understanding your purpose, your life purpose. And it can sound very grand, can't it? But understanding ourselves better, and really getting to know ourselves better, what we stand for and what we believe in, is really important for building your self-belief and your self-confidence, because when you know what you are and what you believe in, that really helps you believe in yourself. So it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to solve world hunger or bring about world peace, but it's more about coming up with a statement that really helps us think about our mission in our lives. You know, what makes us feel like we're living our lives on purpose? What impact do we want to have? And we're going to touch on a quick technique to start this thinking today. Obviously, it takes time to really develop your purpose. It would normally be something that would happen over many months, and you'll probably go on to think about it and develop it. But we'll take the first step in defining what our purpose is today. So before I do that, let me give you a couple of examples of other famous people's purpose statements. So here's one: to be a teacher and to be known for inspiring my students to be more than they thought they could be. So this is a famous celebrity. Any guesses on whose purpose statement this might be? You can write it in the chat pane if you have.
Delegates, I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, Narinder already knows.
So just, you mentioned, Louise, about believing in yourself, and I can see Camilla actually posted earlier at the beginning of the webinar, believe in your abilities and knowledge, believing you're a good person. I think that's a really valid point, and you've just mentioned that now as well. So definitely believing in yourself is so vital, which helps, you know, you becoming or being a positive person.
Yeah, thanks, Camilla. Dalai Lama, we've got a guess in the Q&A pane. Thank you for that. That's a good guess. It's not the Dalai Lama on this occasion. This is a famous American lady.
She's got her own shows.
Yeah. Okay, I'll put you out of your misery and let you know that it is Oprah Winfrey. So Oprah always knew that she wanted to be a teacher, but she never really thought it would be the way that it turned out with her having shows on TV. Okay, one last one for you. To have fun in my journey through life and learn from my mistakes. This is a man, a British man. Oh, and I'm glad to see that was somebody's second guess. I'm sorry, your name doesn't come up in the chat pane. And Camilla, you guessed Oprah as well. Well done. Michael Palin, good guess. Yes, Camilla, well done. It is in fact Richard Branson. And Richard talks a lot about leadership as well, doesn't he? To be a good leader and to bring out the best in people is also really important to him. So ultimately, it's great if you can get something similar for yourself in terms of your purpose and understand what's important to you. So I'm going to read you just a couple of little stories now for you to start that thinking. And if you've got a way to take notes, that will be really helpful. If you want to post what comes up for you in the chat pane, that's fine, but don't feel like you have to. So the first story: you've been given a big advertising board at the side of the motorway. You can put any message you like on it. Thousands of people will drive past it each day. What does it say? And you don't have to overthink it. You can think of the first thing that comes up for you. You've been given a big advertising board at the side of the motorway. You can put any message you like on it. Thousands of people will drive past it each day. What does it say?
We've got some answers coming in. Yeah, so Catherine, just be you. Lots coming in now. So there.
Lovely.
Live, laugh, love. Love that one. From Karen. Love life, Lorna. Yes, truly believe in that.
Do something that makes you feel proud.
Yeah. Smile. Yes.
Yeah. Do the best you can.
Yeah. And
Great.
be nice to each other. I think that's very important. Be nice to each other, and you know, people be nice to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I've got a second story for you now. Imagine you have a magic power to make one change to the world. You can think about the world in general, or you can think about the society or the community in which you live. What one change would you like to make? I'll read that for you again. Imagine you have a magic power to make one change to the world. And that can be the world in general or the community or society that you're in. What one change would you make? Eliminate greediness and people will consider others with empathy. Love it.
Mm.
No person sleeps on an empty stomach.
It's a very different one. Mm.
Yeah. No conflict, no discrimination. Brilliant. Respect others and don't fight. Be kind. Give everyone a perfect conscience.
This is great.
You must smile at least 10 times a day. Very good. Be more tolerant. It's great.
This is really good, Louise. It's very interactive. And, you know, it seems like we've got lots of people engaged. We've got a good number of people listening. Welcome to those who may have just joined us, and thank you to those listening in. So please do keep posting any questions that you may have and answers to what Louise is asking.
Thank you. Respect everyone's differences, and everyone has to take a deep breath before acting. That's a good advice. So you can see how thinking about these things starts to help us really focus on what's important to us, and starts to help us think about, if we had a purpose statement, what are the things that we'd want to have in there. So I'm going to leave that with you, but do, you know, go ahead and think about what might your purpose statement look like, given the things this has made you think about. Okay, now we're going to go on to a second technique that we use, which is understanding your values. So on this slide, you see a list of words. These are things that are often cited as values, but a value can be anything. It can be any word you want to use. You don't have to feel constrained by these. But basically, we all have values, and they're really the measures that we use to tell us if things are right in the world. They're the things that you believe are really important. And they really impact the way you live and work, and they ideally should be determining your priorities and the kind of things that you're doing and the ways that you're behaving. And when what you're doing, whether it's in work or your personal life, matches your values, life is usually pretty good. You feel pretty satisfied and content and happy. When things don't align with your personal values, that's when things feel wrong, and that can be a real source of unhappiness. So making a conscious effort to identify your values is really important. And we don't typically spend a lot of time consciously acknowledging our values, but that can be a really useful tool to help you discover what's important to you. And as you discover what's important to you, that helps you with things like decision making, and also helps you generally know who you are and therefore build your own confidence as well. So again, just a couple of questions for you to reflect on, and again, you're welcome to comment in the chat pane. But just think about, what are the things that are really important to you? What are the things that you take a stand for, that you fight for? And if that's hard, conversely, you can think about, what are the things that frustrate you? What are the things that really wind you up or really make your blood boil? Because you think about the opposite of those things is usually a value. So you know, if somebody being greedy really winds you up, and grabbing everything for themselves, then generosity, the opposite of that, may be your value, for example. So think about those things that are really important to you, that you take a stand for, that are kind of the deal breakers for you. And they'll be the opposite.
Coming through. Sorry, Louise.
Go on, you go.
Lorna saying compassion, creativity. Jane Morgan, equity and fairness. So we've got some answers coming in, as you can see. So delegates also, you can see those.
Yeah, and they'll be different for everyone. There's no right or wrong values. We'll all have different things that are really important to us. And even the same words can mean different things to different people. So creativity for one person might be something very artistic, and for another person it might be getting to implement new ideas at work, or something like that. So it's really knowing what it means to you, what's important to you. A lot of people coming up with honesty, being supportive, trustworthiness, open-minded, kindness. Lovely. So again, understanding your values is something that, you know, usually we work on over time, that you start to think about these things, and then you develop your understanding them over time. But again, I hope this is useful in that you can really start to think about what those things are. Most of us, you know, end up with a list of 5 or 10 things that are the key things for us, that are the really most critical values that we want to live in our lives. And then trying to look for, you know, where those things are not working, where those things aren't happening, can help us find out ways to improve what's going on around us, so that we can have a life that's more true to our values and live those values more, and therefore build our confidence that way. Yeah, new experiences is a good one too. Thank you, Debbie. So the final technique in really kind of understanding yourself that we're going to talk about is knowing your strengths. You know who this is in the picture? Anyone want to write it in the chat? Yay, Arnold. Arnold, very good. Arnold Schwarzenegger. So Arnold Schwarzenegger also says that he suffers from a lack of self-confidence, and as a child he was somebody who was really not very confident at all. He lived in relative poverty. His father used to hit him, I believe. But for him, the thing that built his confidence was really understanding his strength, and obviously quite literally in this example, his physical strength as a bodybuilder. And that really helped him build his confidence. So it's really around kind of knowing what you're good at, knowing what your strengths are, and then really, really focusing on those strengths and working on those strengths and making more of them. So the opposite of thinking about your weaknesses, or your development areas, as they're often called, we'll find that working on our development areas or weaknesses, you know, we might move something that was rubbish to mediocre, and that has very little impact in our lives. But if you really focus on your strengths, then you get to be really good at the things that usually you're good at and you love, and that can really help build your confidence. So for Arnold, focusing on bodybuilding was not a really logical choice. He started bodybuilding in the 1960s, and it wasn't a popular sport at that time, and where he was born in Austria, it wasn't a big sport at all. So he just really went for something that he knew that he loved and that he knew he was good at. So a way to start kind of thinking about your strengths is firstly just to think about those things that you're good at. Some of them may come to mind really obviously. And think about the things that you love doing. Often our strengths and the things we love go hand in hand. We often enjoy the things that we're really good at. You can also think of the times you've been most successful. So if you try and imagine now a time you've been really successful, and think about what strengths did you use to achieve that success. And then it's also really good to think about what other people say you're good at. So maybe you already know, maybe other people tell you that you're really good at a certain thing, really good at listening, really good at spreadsheets, whatever. And if you don't know, ask them. You know, you can ask people around you, what would they say your strengths were? What would they say you're really good at? And help to identify your strengths that way.
We've got Catherine who's just posted something. Says, I would also say it's really good to know and accept our weaknesses This way, when someone points them out to criticize you, it doesn't affect you. As, sorry, I can just about see that.
It doesn't affect you as you've already acknowledged them.
Yeah, sorry, because it's just moved up the, we've got somebody else.
Yeah.
It's moved up. So yeah, so that's really useful, Catherine. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's true. When you're at peace, I think of it with your own weaknesses, and you just accept them as part of yourself. They don't impact your self-esteem in the same way, because you just know, I'm good at these things, I'm not so good at those things, that's who I am. And you learn to like yourself as that. And then, yeah, you don't feel vulnerable when those weaknesses are pointed out. Perseverance is one of your strengths, Paula. Thank you. That's great. Thanks for sharing that.
Excellent. Arnold's a very good example. Strengths, definitely.
Yeah, determination.
Mm.
So we've talked about three things: our purpose, our values, and our strengths. And all of those really come together to help us understand ourselves, understand what's important to us and who we are. And all of that helps build our self-belief and our self-confidence really at its core. So I really encourage you to continue thinking about these things after today's call and continue to build on that. I'm going to talk now about some other techniques that are a little bit more immediate and in the moment. So this next technique is something that Arnold Schwarzenegger also recommends, which is visualizing success, a technique that he used. He would say that long before he became a champion, he used to visualize himself standing on the podium, and that would really get him into a mindset where he felt like he was a champion and would therefore act accordingly. And we can all do that as well, can't we? Whatever it is, if there's a specific thing we're worried about or don't feel confident about, trying to imagine us being successful in that is a really helpful thing to do. You've probably heard other sports people too talking about doing that kind of thing. It's quite a popular practice in the sporting world. And our brain actually isn't very good at telling the difference between the things that have really happened and that we've imagined. So by visualizing, you do trick your brain into believing those things have happened. So you help to build those pathways, and that helps you feel more confident when you're really in that situation. But one of the things that we have hindering us is our inner critic. Have you heard of that term, inner critic? Or sometimes we talk about things like imposter syndrome. Do these statements on the right sound familiar to any of you? I'm not good enough, I can't get anything right, I'm useless, I'm such an idiot, etc., etc. We all have that self-doubt and that inner critical voice in our heads, and actually it's really natural because, again, our brain is wired to keep us safe, from historical evolution reasons, and it really focuses on the negative and the threats more than the positive, to help keep us safe. But nowadays that's not that helpful. It's like the world has kind of moved on at a faster pace than our brains have evolved. So it's really important to realize that actually this voice is just our brain playing tricks on us and trying to keep us safe. It's not actually true. Because often we can hear these voices in our head and think, yeah, I hear the voice, so I'm going to believe it, it must be true. But actually that's not the case. This voice is just your brain trying to keep you safe. So the first step is really to notice and acknowledge that voice and think, hey, I don't have to believe this. It's actually not really true. Basically, don't believe anything you think, everything you think. And then the other tip I'd give is really talk to yourself as if you're talking to your own best friend. Often we use words and language to talk to ourselves that we'd never use if we were talking to a friend or someone we knew in the same situation. So really kind of watching yourself and thinking, gosh, if I wouldn't talk to a friend like that, I shouldn't talk to myself like that, and being your own best friend is a really good idea. So we've talked a lot about our brains and how we're thinking. Let's shift gears a bit to talk a little bit about our body and body language. You may have heard some statistics on the importance of body language in communication before that are often quoted. There's something called Albert Mehrabian's rule. He's a professor of psychology back in the 70s, and he did some research on this. basically when people are communicating to one another about things that involve feelings and attitudes, like whether they like or don't like each other, that kind of thing, how much of how you like the other person is based on the words or the verbal stuff that you're saying, how much is based on how you say it, and how much is based on the body language. So anyone familiar with that, or any guesses what percentage would be based on the spoken word versus how you say it versus the body language? Body language 70%. Yep, pretty much. So we've got 7% from the spoken word, 38% from the voice and tone, and then 55% from body language. So you can see how little of that comes from the actual words, and much more is about either how you say it or how you hold your body. Some good guesses there, thank you. And obviously this is communicating, in terms of things about feelings and attitudes. If it will change depending on the topic of conversation. If somebody's asking you for directions, they're probably going to care much more about your spoken word than your body language. But when we're communicating the big stuff around feelings and attitudes, our body language is particularly important. So what does good body language look like? Well, let's do this now. Let's get yourself, think about how you're sitting or standing now and get some good body confident language in place. So have your chin and your head up. So you're looking forward or slightly up, shoulders back. Make eye contact. If you're talking to somebody, you should always be making eye contact with them. Smile. That came up a lot earlier, didn't it? But yeah, let's smile as we talk to people or whatever. And if you do that now, and then stand up straight. If you're sitting, sit up straight. Have your back straight. Have your palms up. So that's an interesting one, having your palms up, because actually our wrists are a really vulnerable part of our bodies, and so showing people our wrists shows that we're friendly, because we're showing a vulnerable part of our body. So when you're meeting or greeting people, having your kind of palms and wrists towards them is a sign of I come in friendship. And then finally, have your feet, unlike Marcel Marceau, in a open, wide stance. So typically kind of hip width or shoulder width apart, gives you a feeling of real confidence. And you can do that sitting now, or you can stand up and do that. And it probably feels good. Yeah, you start to feel more confident as you hold your body in that position.
So Louise, having the right posture is quite essential. And also what I find is when you sometimes tend to talk to people, they have their arms folded, or I'm a typical example of that. I can sometimes do that when I'm sat in a meeting, or if I'm talking to somebody, and then I realize, look, no, this doesn't seem right, and shouldn't be crossing my arms, and I should be having that right posture in terms of the body language, and when I'm talking to somebody.
Yeah, I do that too. And when we feel nervous, we naturally try to cover our vital organs. So we start wrapping our arms and our legs around each other, because we're trying to keep our vital organs safe, is the biological reason behind it. But yeah, as you say, Narinder, it's really good to notice if you're doing that, and then try and unfold yourself, so you're creating a better impression to the people around you, and it will help you make you feel better too.
Definitely.
Yeah, keeping eye contact. It's a difficult one. There's a question. Keeping eye contact makes me feel self-conscious. Any techniques to overcome this? It's a balance, isn't it, eye contact? And sometimes the more we think about it, the harder it gets, because you've become over-conscious of it. I think... Oh, I think there's a bit of background noise, Narinder, from your end.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. Is that from your end? I can hear background noise. Oh.
Not from our end.
Strange. It's only us that can be heard, right?
I have hundreds of things.
There's some kind of chatting in the background.
Okay, apologies for that. Okay, Louise, tell me now if you can hear them.
Who does? My direct consultant.
Yeah, I can hear people talking. Can everyone else hear people talking in the background, or is it just me? Yeah, they can.
Yeah, apologies, I shall quickly look into this.
She's really having problems breathing. And she's got teddy bears on her bed.
Okay, we're just going to put you on hold for a minute, delegates. Apologies for this.
No, I only asked because if a child's got asthma, they shouldn't have teddy bears.
Louise, are you able to just mute it from your end?
Hello, Marie speaking. Hello, Timbo, you alright?
Sorry about this. I don't know what's happening.
I can't mute the background noise. Everyone will still be able to hear it.
Like 3 or 4. They wouldn't. You're joking. This morning, there was a 4-car pile-up on the M4 just outside Junction 6. I didn't get into 9:30.
Hi, Louise.
Yeah, 9:30.
Hi,
Hi.
Louise.
Hi.
Hi. I don't know who that is. I don't think it's somebody from our company. We've got some third party that may have just tuned in. I don't know who that is. Definitely not somebody from the chamber because they've mentioned Maya and we don't know
Horrible,
her.
'cause, yeah.
On the participant list, it's got, I think you were the host, and it's also got a co-host come up. I wonder if we can kick that one off, can we?
Okay, I've just reported it to IT. They're on their way. Oh yes, I can see co-host.
I
I think
can
that
mute
might
them.
be John. That
Yeah.
might be John who's just monitoring everything. Okay, this has not happened before. I do apologise
Obviously.
to the delegates, but we've somehow got some third party that's just all of a sudden tuned
Yeah,
in.
if you can ask John to mute, maybe.
Kit Boys went to running club. And
Yeah,
so
I did mute from our set.
Oh, that's it.
John's just here, so apologies for that.
Something's muted now. That's gone, I think. Does that sound better to everyone else? Oh, good. You can still hear me. That's good. It was interesting to know about the 4-car pile-up in the M4, I know, but probably not.
Okay,
Really.
is that okay? Is that okay?
Yes,
now,
it's
Louise?
fixed now.
Okay, I do apologise for that. That's not happened before. So we've just had some, third party that just managed to get on. I don't know how that's happened. So yeah,
Okay.
let's continue with this, Louise.
Yeah, thank you. We were talking about eye contact, and it can be quite difficult, can't it, when you start to think about it too much? And it is a balance of looking people in the eye, but not completely, staring at them. I think if you're not sure where to look, looking at the top of someone's nose, the point in between their eyes, in between their eyebrows, is a good place to look if you feel uncomfortable. And then it's just kind of making sure that you're looking for a bit, breaking away for a bit, looking for a bit. That can be helpful. So I hope that helps. So, oops, as you, oh, sorry, is that me? There we go. So as you held your body in that confident position, you probably felt that you started to feel better as well. We know that the body and mind are a system. We talked about that bit when we talked about the fight, flight, freeze response, how one affects the other. I mean, it is true that the way that you hold your body also affects what's going on in your brain and how you're thinking, but we often don't realize that. So some of this stuff around how you hold your body to be more confident actually makes you feel more confident, as well as making you look more confident to other people. So we talk about something called power posing. A psychologist called Amy Cuddy came up with the concept of power posing, which is really all about what your body language communicates to you. And these pictures show us some examples of good power poses that help you feel more confident. So again, you can try them now. Put your hands behind your head at your desk is helpful, or your hands above your head. That can be a good sports person's winning pose as well, a good confident pose, or standing with your hands on your hips and your feet hip width apart. So, try some of those out now, see how they feel. It's really good to take up as much space as possible. That helps your confidence. Again, really stand tall and smiling. We know that smiling does actually also release kind of happy hormones and get rid of stress hormones, so that will improve your mood as well if you smile. So you can use that technique to build your confidence in the moment. And another technique that we use to build our confidence in the moment can be listening to music. So that's another scientifically shown way to boost your confidence. Often really uplifting music, or really powerful music, something with a bit of beat or a bit of bass can be quite good to lift your confidence. Anyone got any songs they recommend that really help them lift their confidence? Simply the Best, yeah, it's a good one. Titanium, Eye of the Tiger. Black Eyed Peas, I got a feeling I like that one. Reading self-motivation books is another great tip. Yeah. Happy is brilliant. Yeah, I love that. 80s metal hits. Yeah, good for you. Hi-ho, silver lining. So you can start to build your confidence playlist. You've got a few tips here, you know, start to get that playlist together that you can listen to when you know it's a time or a day that you really need to build your confidence. If you're going into a tricky meeting at work, sometimes it can be good to listen to one of these songs on the way, or in the car on the way, wherever you're going, that kind of thing. Great. Okay, so the final technique we're going to talk about today is breathing. And we're going to talk about breathing because controlling our breathing or doing breathing exercises really helps us relax. And it's actually one of the best ways to lower stress in the body and one of the best ways to influence what's happening in your brain. Because when you breathe deeply, it sends a message to your brain to calm down and relax. And that brain then sends that message to your body, and you start to feel more relaxed and more comfortable and more confident. All those things we talked about, you know, when your fight, flight, freeze response kicks in, like that faster heart rate, faster breathing, high blood pressure even, they all start to decrease as you breathe deeply to relax. And they're really good techniques because you can really do them anywhere. You don't need to be laid, you know, somewhere special. You can do a breathing exercise at your desk, in the car, at a meeting, really anytime you like. So I find it really handy technique to use. So let's just take a minute to do a quick breathing exercise to close today so that we can all leave this call feeling all really lovely and relaxed and refreshed. I'm going to use a technique called 4-7-8. So you breathe in for 4, you hold your breath for 7, and you breathe out for 8. There's lots of different techniques that you can use, different breathing counts. There's no right or wrong, whatever works for you. I just particularly like this one. But generally it's thought that as long as the out breath is longer than the in breath, that's the most important thing. So let's just do a few rounds of this now. If you put one hand on your belly and the other on your chest, and then take a deep, slow breath from your belly and silently count to 4 as you breathe in, and you'll feel your belly push your hand out as you breathe into your belly, and your chest won't move. And then hold your breath and silently count to 7. And then as you breathe out, silently count from 1 to 8 to get all the air out of your lungs by the time you count to 8. So you'll feel the hand on your belly go in and fall back. You can even kind of feel like you're using it to push all the air out as you count to 8. So do a couple more rounds of that. If you breathe in for 4, hold for 7, and breathe out for 8. Breathe in for 4, hold for 7, and breathe out for 8. And last one, breathe in for 4, hold for 7, and breathe out for 8. And you can repeat that as many times as you like until you start to feel calmer. Hopefully you're starting to feel a bit calmer now.
This is great. This is a bit like meditation.
Yeah, it's a bit. It's like a quick hit of meditation. You can do it anytime, anywhere when you need it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I do find this quite useful, and it does help you increase your confidence if you are going to be going in and doing a public talk or going into an interview. So these breathing techniques are really, really good and helpful.
Yeah, I use them all the time. Really good, really helpful. Thank you. So we've covered a number of different techniques today, and I really hope you found something in what we've covered that you can take away and use to help you build your self-belief and your self-confidence. Are there any more questions you'd like to ask?
please feel free to just post those in the chat box, and Louise will answer those. We've got 5 minutes left, approximately 5 minutes. But Louise, yes, I would like to thank you for delivering such a great webinar today on increasing your self-confidence and self-belief. I've taken away, I will definitely be taking away some really useful tips. Love the breathing techniques that you've just gone through. And yeah, you've just overall given us a really good insight on this subject. And I'm going to share the link, the recorded link with my colleagues and also some of my members. So anybody that's also interested to do that, you can do that via the YouTube link on our website, which will hopefully be available sometime tomorrow, or maybe even earlier than that. So thank you, Louise. If anybody's got any questions, I think something's just come in.
Yep. Yeah, is anxiety due to poor confidence? They can be related, but there can be other causes of anxiety too. So it's worth really having a chat with an expert if you're suffering a lot from anxiety, to really understand what's behind that. But building your confidence is usually helpful in terms of reducing anxiety. How do you get the confidence in making a big risk and starting a business? Well, that's a big question. Yeah, I think for me, the techniques we talked about at the beginning around purpose, values, and strengths are a big part of that. When you really feel that you know your purpose, values, and strength, it makes taking that risk a lot clearer, I guess. You know that's something that you really want, that you need to do, and then it is deciding to be comfortable with taking a risk, I guess, is that decision that you have to weigh up in those situations.
So, yeah, so we've got Amy, we've got Julie, they're all thanking you for your webinar today, which is great. But yes, thank you to all the listeners that have listened today. It's been, a really good webinar. Louise, have you got anything you'd like to touch on, or anything else you'd like to say?
Thank you so much. Thank you for hosting it, Narinda, and thank you everyone for all your engagement on the chat pane. I know it can be tricky sometimes, but we had some really good comments there, so thank you for that. If you'd like to get in touch to talk about any of the things we've discussed further, feel free, always happy to. And I'll hand back to Narinda.
That's great. So Louise, her contact details are available on this page, which is showing now. If you'd like to contact Louise, there's a telephone number, email address for her. If you do need anything else that you'd like to maybe discuss with myself, you can contact me. My details are at the beginning of the slide of this presentation, sorry. And I'm just going to now move over to our last slide, which is basically just telling you about our new membership model. So we've now actually changed our membership model from an employee-based to a value-based model. So members can enjoy an enhanced membership experience that will give them a much stronger offering than we did in the past. Each tier is actually designed to attract a business depending on the level of exposure they wish to gain, as well as savings that can be made. So please do check out our new enhanced website. There's lots more available. There's an online business directory and lots of other features and benefits. So visit our website, and also those who are members listening in, you can actually log into the member zone and see what's enhanced and so on. So thank you very much, Louise.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And yep, so delegates, once again, just to finalise this and just to end or wrap up, I can confirm that this webinar was recorded and you can listen in again via our website. So thank you very much.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.